We actually ran like an analysis to see what are some of the best indicators towards like the top 10 percentile of growth. Consistency in posting was not correlated to that top 10 percentile.
Wow. Meet Zack Honarvar. He got his start managing YouTubers like Yes Theory and Airrack before they were the massive channels you know them as today. Zack has worked with more than 10,000 creators since 2017. So I wanted to ask him, what separates the top 0.1% from the rest?
There's a curiosity, like a relentless curiosity.
In this episode, you'll learn the traits of highly successful creators.
It's an unhealthy amount of obsession that goes into being the biggest creator in the world.
How you should measure growth.
With Yes Theory, we used to say, what's our golden metric? Is it views? Is it revenue? Is it whatever? None of those matter.
And how to set yourself up for long-term success.
You really don't know how long, the thing that you're doing will work for. Optimizing for money and chasing that is not, in my opinion, a very good metric of success. It also leaves you feeling very empty, and it's a hamster wheel that never ends.
Thank you to Artlist for sponsoring this video. How many people have you seen go through CreatorNow at this point, estimated?
Approximately 10,000.
Wow.
In total.
Do you ever have anybody come in to CreatorNow and you just have like an immediate feeling that this person has it?
Yeah, actually, you interviewed one of them. Jenny Hoyos came in to CreatorNow with essentially 0 followers and like no subscribers, barely had made videos, and she was on every single call, in every single workshop. And we were like, don't you go to school? Like, what are you doing? And she was like, I've like accelerated through school and like, I want to do this thing now. And she was just asking such smart questions, and she was just so bright. And I was like, I remember telling her, I was like, would buy stock in you if I could buy stock in you. And lo and behold, now she's crushing it, and she's like the shorts wizard for everyone. And so that was one person. There's been a few, but she's, because it's related to your channel and you've done a great interview with her. That's the one that comes to mind.
I want to dig into that. So whether it's her or some of the other people that come to mind, I'd love to hear, what is it about these people that sends a signal where you, having seen now thousands, 10,000 different creators try this stuff, you have some sort of feeling that this person has it. I would love to explore what that might be.
I think one of the things, and Jenny definitely had this, but a lot of people do, even Airrack did, and it was one of the reasons I really wanted to work with him, was there's a curiosity, like a relentless curiosity of what could I get better at? What is missing from this content? What are people looking for? How does attention work? How does attention get captured? And how do you earn trust? What does that even mean with a stranger that doesn't know who I am? That is not just about, some hack or some like trick in an editing room. It's almost an energetic thing that someone starts to understand in a very deep way. And I think people who have that curiosity and understand that it's not a shortcut, and it's not just in something that happens in a CapCut template, but that it's almost a lifelong thing that you're trying to uncover. And it has a deeper meaning for them as well. It's not just about how to get views, but about how to also, make content that fulfills something for them, but also then connects with someone at the end of this screen on the other side of the camera. I think people who understand that it's a more holistic thing, that tends to be a big alarm bell for me, that like this person knows what's going on.
I love this answer because you start with the word curiosity, and then you mention a whole bunch of skills about, things that are involved in creating videos and building an audience and publishing. But you didn't say, oh, they're great video editors. They already are great at building trust. They know exactly what people want. You're saying they have a desire and they have curiosity, and they indulge that curiosity and figure things out, which I think is really empowering, because that means that anybody watching this, if you do have the curiosity, you can learn the things that you need. It's not that you have a prerequisite set of skills. It's you have like a temperament, it sounds like.
Yeah, 100%. I would say Airrack is a great example of this. Like Eric, originally when I met him, he was editing his own videos. He was filming his own videos. He was not the best editor in the world. He was not the best filmer in the world, but he had a temperament and a curiosity that, and a desire to learn that I think was unmatched, connected with a willingness to put in the work to incrementally improve, based on the feedback loop that he was getting. Because I think that's the other part of it is you can be very curious. You could ask a lot of questions. You can hear a lot of information. But if you're not willing to put in the work or also put your ego aside to sometimes, experiment or, try a video out differently than it was before with leaving space for failure, because that might be an outcome from something that is an experimentation. A lot of people, I think subscribe to like I'm going to put out, and we do this a lot. We tell creators, put out a video every single week and just stay consistent. And then a lot of creators fall into this habit of, I'm just going to make the exact same video every single week. And then they get to like 20, 30 videos in a row every week. And they're like, why am I not getting better? Why are they all getting 500 views? And it's because they're also not listening to the feedback or implementing that feedback because they're worried that it's going to actually go down. And whether it's, you're used to 500 views or 5,000 or 50,000 or 500,000, the room for experimentation might mean that you take a few steps back in order to take a lot of steps forward. And so I think that also that ability to be okay with failure and not worry about what other people are going to say about you because your videos are not performing as well as they used to, whatever your baseline of expectation is, that's also a huge skill that falls within that emotional intelligence.
I see so much of the same tried advice of people saying you have to be consistent. You have to just publish consistently over and over again. And like there's truth to that, but it fails to hit some of the nuance of what you're saying, which is improvement matters a lot. A lot of times when people say, well, I was successful because I was consistent, they're underplaying or understating the value of this implicit thing, which was not only was I consistent, but I was consistently getting better. I was really focused on the next one had to be a little bit better in this way, or had to try something a little bit differently. Because you're right, if you just focus on publishing the same thing or the same quality thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. And this focus on improvement is something that I would have guessed you would have said, hey, the people that we see come through that are succeeding, that is an element. I'm glad that it's come up already.
Also, of the 10,000 creators that we had that came through CreatorNow, at the end of last year, we actually ran like an analysis to see what are some of the best indicators towards like the top 10 percentile of growth in subscribers and viewership. And actually we were surprised because consistency in posting was not correlated to that top 10 percentile. And we had for a long time, said the thing you need to do if you want to become a creator is you need to post weekly videos, and that's the thing. And although I think there's probably a little bit of like indication that a lot of people need to stop overthinking it and just get into the motion of making videos, that by itself is not the thing that's causated towards success and to growth. That's just the prerequisite to be getting the feedback loop and the information that you need in order to then implement the changes to then grow and succeed. And so I think, people just took that initial thing as at face value, or sometimes took that initial thing at face value. I think we were guilty of it and then realized later on, wait a second, that's not the only thing.
Let me double click on that because I want to really dig into this and get into the weeds here, but I feel like it's really important to say, if you are unable or have not yet exhibited the ability to publish on command, that is like the most important prerequisite thing. If you can't get yourself to publish and put stuff out there, that's like the mountain to climb. But once you get to a point of like, I can publish and I can be consistent, that is kind of effortless. I agree with you that, especially on YouTube, but I think this is going to be true across any platform, we're moving into a period of time when consistency of publishing matters less than consistency of experience. I want to know that when I engage with a piece of content that you've created, I consistently have a good experience with it. I don't actually care how often you publish, as long as when you do and I engage with it, I am rewarded by having a consistently good experience. There's this guy, Paul Sappho, who gave this really great lecture to a place called the Long Now Foundation. You heard of the Long Now Foundation?
I haven't.
It's super interesting. It's this group that is all about long-term thinking. They've put like this giant clock up in the mountains to show you like how important long-term thinking is. But they're all futurists. And he gave a talk in, I think, like 2017 about the creator economy. And he was talking about the evolution of industries and how every time there is a abundance of something new, it creates a new adjacent scarcity. I have a point, I promise. So for a long time, the ability to publish a lot and be on multiple platforms, that was a hard thing to do. There were few people that were doing that. That was scarce. And now with the tools that are out there, it's getting easier and easier to publish a volume of things. So what does the new adjacent scarcity to volume look like? And I think it's quality. I think it's super high quality, really thoughtful, incredible experiences. And that's what we're going to move to, is more people saying, you know what, I'm going to publish when it makes sense to publish, and my audience can have a good experience.
I fully agree with that. There's another example that comes to mind is there's a short form creator that I've been a huge fan of recently. The channel's called By Maximize. He makes these like video essay kind of like uses sound bites from various interviews and then puts these like really beautiful cinematic shots over them. But one of the things he does is he plays around with subtitles. So subtitles will go around some of the framing in the shots. They will pop up and screen in different sizes. And he's obviously done that manually. And it was fascinating to me that in a world when everyone hated subtitling and everyone was like, this is the least enjoyable process of any video editing process. Then, all this auto captioning functionality came out and everyone was like, this saves us. And everyone moved to just auto captioning. Everything kind of looked the same. There were these CapCut templates that everything followed. And he went the other direction and said, I'm not going to use those. I'm actually going to do them manually and make it very evident that this is manual. And it's like going to be part of the video process, the part of what makes the video special. And I think that's been a large part of why his videos have been so different. They capturing of attention is because they don't look like everything else. So I agree. I think in a world where something does become easy and abundant, there's always room in whatever was left over for that thing to become premium. Also, if you extrapolate in any world in which something became common technology, like in now what we're seeing with AI, for example, when horse and carriages were the main port of transportation and then cars were invented, horses and carriages became a luxury thing that people did, not the masses. Hand-woven clothes were like the thing. And then when machinery came around to like machine make clothing, handmade clothes became a delicacy and something that only rich people have. So I think we'll see the same with AI. I think, when our ability for capturing drone footage of a mountain landscape is going to be something that we don't need a drone to capture anymore because AI will create it. But then there will be a premium on films and content that say, we actually went here. This is real. And I think that will become a whole new part of content and videography and cinematography because of what we're seeing in these technological advancements in AI.
Totally. I had this guy named Phil Agnew on the show, and he digs into like psychological biases. And this is called costly signaling. When you can signal that you did something that came at a high cost of money or effort, people value that more highly. So all the stuff that is making things cheaper, more accessible, if you use that as a way to say, actually, I'm going to do the more costly version of that and make it clear that I'm doing the more costly version, that stands out. And so much of this game is standing out. Like how do you stand out amongst a sea of people creating videos? Is that a trend that you see people who reach the heights on YouTube they're good at doing?
Yeah, I remember in some early conversations with Eric, one of the things that he said that's always stuck with me is a lot of people try starting YouTube and then looking at someone that's doing really well and then trying to make a version of a video that kind of aspires to be that person who's succeeding. And I think that's a great place for like very early beginners to start, but people who are at a place where they have skills and they've been doing it for a while and they're really ready to like start breaking out, or that's a huge ambition of theirs. You can't just do a B tier version of what another creator is doing. You almost have to ask, what are other people not willing to do or incapable of doing that I can do and have resources around me that give me an unfair advantage at doing this? And I remember Eric saying, I can't spend more money than Mr. Beast. There's no way I can do that. So my videos can't at the very beginning be that. They can't be this, they can't be that. What they can be is I can do things people aren't willing to do. There's probably not a lot of people willing to go and sneak into this event, or there's probably not a lot of people willing to endure this crazy challenge of like skateboarding across Florida and capturing that. And because of that, I can endure. I know that that's something unique about me. And so I'm going to go do those things. And I think finding whatever it is about you, whether it's your knowledge, if you have a particular skill set or knowledge set, whether it's where you live, or that you live inside of a Venn diagram, in the middle of a Venn diagram between a bunch of different industries that is very rare for people to live at the intersection of, and you can share a unique perspective in a way that many other people can't. I think it's those types of things that help creators really stand out. But yes, I do think the desire to figure out, how do I create something different that other people can't potentially compete with me on a fair playing ground, is what lets people, achieve success in a rapid, short time span.
I've heard somebody say there are no world famous cover bands. It's like, you can be a great cover band. You can be very entertaining and it can be great, but it's not the same as doing originals. And like, your cover of the song probably isn't going to be as good as the original. I mean, I love Luke Combs's Fast Car, but come on. It's like, this is Trace Chapman. This is the stuff.
Look at these podcasters in their natural habitat.
Connor?
So deep in conversation, blissfully unaware that it is time to introduce our sponsor, Artlist.
So Artlist is talking to me right now?
Well, no, it's just me. But Artlist has a new feature.
It can narrate my life now?
Kind of. It's a voiceover generator.
That's pretty cool.
Artlist is the first creative platform to offer a voiceover generator created specifically for video creators, and it's super easy to use. Now, when you go to artlist.io, you will see a new voiceover tab with a ton of exclusive voices to choose from that are modeled from professional voice actors. Check this out.
The 1950s brought a newfound sense of prosperity and optimism.
They say life's a journey, but they never tell you what kind of road you're going to find yourself on.
Today, we examine the cost of living in New York City.
That's pretty good.
That's really good.
The voiceover generator is included in an Artlist Max subscription, along with great music, sound effects, cinematic stock footage, and motion graphics templates, which is an insane deal. And if you just want the new feature, there's a standalone voiceover plan as well.
Get 2 free months on any annual plan using our link in the description.
Thank you to Artlist for supporting the channel.
I want to hear a little bit about work ethic, because we just talked about, like, maybe it's not important to publish a new video every week, but I doubt that means that you're sitting around and you just make something a couple days out of the month. The people that you've seen find extraordinary success, what does their work ethic tend to look like?
I mean, yeah, I think work ethic is everything based on what your goals are. And I think where it comes from is not necessarily work ethic, but your willingness to sacrifice things in your life. Because I think it's not just about the time spent working, but also based on how large your goals are, you will likely need to sacrifice certain things in your life in order to even have a chance at achieving the things you say you're going to achieve. So, I'll chat with people that are creators that sometimes are like, I want to be the biggest creator in the world. Okay. And I'll be like, what do you do on your weekends? And I'm like, yeah, but I also, want to have a 6-pack of abs. I also want to, spend all this time with my family. I also want to have like 10 kids. You know what I mean? Like, and there's not to say that sometimes you can't have certain things in combination, but anyone, there's a million interviews with Mr. Beast that say exactly this, which is it's an unhealthy amount of obsession that goes into being the biggest creator in the world. And the things that someone like Jimmy, being the biggest creator in the world, have had to sacrifice in order to get there, social life, mental health, his level of anonymity of being able to go outside and have a normal, social life, or even just life in general, is what he's had to give up. And so I often remind creators that whenever you say you want something, or just people in general, whenever you say you want something and you have a goal, you have to not only be willing to put in the work to achieve it, but you also have to be willing to say, what am I giving up in my life in order to be able to have this? And so does that mean that I don't have as much of a social life? Does that mean that I can't afford to have an 8-hour job that has nothing to do with making content? I think that's another thing. Creators are like, hey, I want to become a full-time creator. And I want to make videos that are at this level. Okay, well, what do you do from 9 to 5? Well, I work as a waiter. Okay, well, that's not bad because you got to pay the bills and content isn't doing that. But what if you had a job that made you a better editor? What if you had a job that worked with a creator and did production, where you actually were building a muscle that helps you in that thing? Because the chances of you being able to become create the level of videos that you're telling me you want to make from the hours of 9 to 5 or 5 to 9 is really low, because the other 9 hours of your day, you're trading your time for money. And so I think we're in such like a workaholic, romanticizing economy where we go like, oh, you got to grind and you just got to work. But I don't think people should think about it that way. I think people should just think about, what is the lifestyle that I need to have, and what are the things I need to sacrifice within this lifestyle in order to make space for the work that is needed in order to get to where I want to get to.
This has only become clear to me in the last few years. Like, as my platform has grown, as I've found more success, I get closer to the people that I've modeled after and aspired to for a long time. And it becomes so obvious, the trade-offs and sacrifices that they make. And you are confronted with the question, am I willing to make the same trade-offs and sacrifices? And more times than not, for me personally, the answer has been no. And then you have to reckon with that and say, well, what does that mean for my ambition? Like, what does that mean for my expectations of growth or speed or outcomes? It's kind of a trippy thing, but I would encourage anyone watching this who is modeling after somebody else, try to get a full sense of what are the sacrifices and trade-offs they're making, and it comes up in conversations and interviews, which I really like sometimes, is you really get to hear some clues as to like, what aspects of your social life or relationships do you not have that I have that I would not be willing to give up? I think it's actually a healthy exercise. But I agree with you that work ethic, whether you let it take over your entire life or not, seems to be a common denominator across people who have extraordinary success. They are working a lot. Balance is not very prevalent in the people that are really at the top end, I find.
I will say this too, though, is that it's not just work ethic, but what to work on. I think there's a lot of people that also work on things that they are comfortable working on, and then avoid the few things that they know if they spent time on would make the highest ROI difference. But because it's uncomfortable or they suck at it, they avoid it. And then they're like, but I'm working 10-hour days, or I'm working all this time, but it's on things that they know are not pushing the needle forward. It's like, I think it's, I forget his name, Chris something. It says the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. I really think that quote is true, in the sense that most people know the thing that's holding them back, but because it's so uncomfortable, they avoid that work. And so it's not just about work ethic, but working smart on the things that you know are going to push and propel you forward.
Let's talk about personality a little bit. I think this certainly plays through in video and probably on other platforms too, but taking YouTube as an example, a lot of people, we get comments on some of our videos of people who have been successful, and people be like, it's because they're attractive. It's because they have a great personality. And I wonder how big of a role that plays, and whether that is something that can be developed or overcome.
It's a great question. Kate, who's my co-founder and business partner and has worked with me for a lot of years, she often describes, we meet certain creators or certain artists, and she says that person's got that sparkle. And I do think that is something inherent that people have. And you just spend time around them, and you're like, this person's energy is different. There's something drawing me towards this person. And I don't know how much of that is nature or nurture or their own work ethic. I do think that there's something within people that make people gravitate towards them in unique ways. So I do think that personality matters a ton. And I don't think that people or creators should spend a ton of time trying to change their personality to be more of what they think works on YouTube or in other social platforms. I think actually one of the superpowers that you could have, or I think what makes some of those people actually have that sparkle, is being really aware of who I actually am. And being so comfortable showing that, not only showing that to people in real life, but showing that on camera and not being performative, that the person on the other end of the screen can't help but feel like they relate to someone, or relate to that person that they're seeing. I think the person who has this, and I almost think it's potentially like out of their control at this point, is Emma Chamberlain. Like, I think Emma Chamberlain is probably so crazily herself on screen that's what's led to her being able to achieve what she's achieved, because she is incredibly vulnerable. She's incredibly herself. And I think she's gotten so comfortable being in front of a camera without actually it feeling like a camera's on her, that she's able to have a level of intimacy and emotional connection with the viewer on the other side that is really, really challenging. Anyone knows who's tried this, who tried to turn on a camera and point it at them, something in you changes. And there's a level of comfortability that you have to have with that camera and speaking to a lens as if it was a friend. That is a skill that is developed. And I think you get more comfortable over time. But I think the thing that I see a lot of creators fall into is they perform. The camera turns on and they'll like throw on their Mr. Beast voice and they like make themselves animated because they think that's what needs to happen. And I don't think that that's the case. I think you will achieve far more success figuring out how do I let my true authentic personality shine through. Also, over the long term, that authentic true personality will be a lot more sustainable to uphold rather than you feeling like every time a camera turns on, you need to wear this mask and be this character.
What happens over time if you change as a person? Do you build this relationship with your audience where you're authentic no matter how your interests and personality changes? Or I've heard some people say they get to a point where it almost feels like now they're playing a caricature of their self because the thing that got attention is no longer who they are today. And they feel this tension of, do I need to maintain that version of me for the camera?
Yeah, it's a great question. Jay, you're a fucking great podcast host, dude. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of big creators that I know or I've met and had a chance to chat with about this where they're like, people expect this, or the worst thing, people will come up to you in the street if you're successful being someone else and they'll think you're someone you're not. And that's even worse. And so I do think that, if you're not authentically yourself, then you're setting the wrong expectation. And then you will have to wear this mask and play this caricature. I think the only way to have a sustainable career as a creator is to evolve as your personality evolves. I think, and the example that comes to mind is Logan Paul. Logan Paul is not the same personality on camera today as he was when he first started. He has allowed himself to mature, and it's been one of the main reasons why he's been able to have the longevity as a creator that has grown up with his audience. And he's been able to show, I'm not still doing those same pranks. I'm not still doing these same types of vlogs. I'm talking about more serious stuff on a podcast. The format's changed, and it's allowed for the format of my content to mature with me and with my own mindset. And I think that that's the right way to do it in order to have a long career.
Also, talk about work ethic. That guy is incredible as a wrestler. I'm like low-key a wrestling fan, and he is so good and got so good so quickly. And that only comes from working super hard in the gym.
100%.
I would love to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and say, what are some of the red flags you hear from creators who come in and say, I'm going to be a huge success and this means a lot to me? What are some of the signals that you see that maybe this person isn't cut out for this, or I think this person is prioritizing the wrong things?
If your actions don't back up your words, often that is the biggest sign for me that I choose to and when I'm ever evaluating if I'm going to collaborate with a creator or something like that, if we spend time, we have a meeting, it's 1 or 2 hours, it's great, a lot of energy. That's a great idea. This is a great idea. Yeah, I should stay consistent. Yeah, I should work on this project and just stop overthinking it and just get started. And then nothing happens. That's usually a really bad sign and then usually that's followed with a bunch of excuses. But I thought about it more and I didn't think that that worked. And so it's almost a lack of the work ethic and a lack of following through on commitments that you have. Yeah. I do think another thing that comes to mind is just perfectionism. A lot of times the excuses on that side are it's not good enough. I'm not sure. The idea is not strong enough. The format's not strong enough. And I often think that perfectionism is just masked insecurity. We think that everything needs to be perfect because we're afraid of being less than when something is published or for people judging us or failing. And I think that that's also, people hide behind this perfectionism mask or shield. But at the end of the day, I think people need to be okay failing. So if failure is holding you back, I think that's one of the main reasons I see it not work out for people.
I see that all the time too. And there is no perfect. You can't make anything perfect. Even the stuff that I, in the moment, thought, this is incredible, the best thing I could make. 6 months pass and I look back at it and I say, that was trash. But I can only feel that way because I published, learned from it, and got better. Like there is no better teacher than feedback on something you actually published. So I 100% agree about perfectionism being a problem.
That's a really good point too, is it's all about how you feel. Also, people, I think, connect themselves with the outcome of the video in terms of viewership or other metrics like that. And that's completely out of your hands. You ask, I would say 8 out of 10 creators what the most viewed video on their channel is. And I bet you they had no idea it was going to be that video. And every creator that I've spoken to has the opposite story as well, where they're like, this is going to be a banger. And then it does not perform. And so does that mean that that video wasn't good? I think we need to disconnect ourselves from that output. And we often talk about inside of CreatorNow having a checklist that you go through before you click publish that reflects on, did I put in what I felt was required in order to make this the best video it could be? Do I feel proud of myself for the inputs that are under my control? And if you can reflect on that before you hit the publish button and you feel proud of it, then the rest of it is completely out of your hands, and you need to be able to disconnect yourself from how it performs or what views it gets or what the comment sections say, or else you'll never be happy. And so I think that, if you are about to click publish and you're like, I could have made this edit better, or I took a shortcut and let AI write my script and I shouldn't have done that. Like, we all have those thoughts, we know. And so that is indication that it's not as good as it could be, but it's not because it didn't get views. It's not because it didn't perform.
I think a lot of people getting into this, they think success is views. They think success is subscribers, watch time. But I'm curious from you, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, where do you see the most successful creators focusing in terms of goals? Like, what are they trying to optimize for? Is it views or is it something else?
I think everyone has their own definition of success, and that's what makes life beautiful. I think that one of the most important things that I try to advocate for with the creators that I work with is a sense of peace, fulfillment, and happiness in their day-to-day lives. And so, having money is something that is a byproduct of adding value to a lot of people's lives. And so I think that sometimes is a consequence of having impact, providing value, solving problems. And that can be, you provide a little bit of entertainment to lots of millions of people. And if you can do that really, really well, you'll make a lot of money. But optimizing for money and chasing that is not, in my opinion, a very good metric of success. It also leaves you feeling very empty, and it's a hamster wheel that never ends. On the other side, I think, the optimization or the pursuit of, can I become the best storyteller I can be? And trying to master a craft often becomes a lifelong journey for someone, but also provides fulfillment on an incremental basis because it's something that they're working on, getting better at, and they're seeing the fruits of their improvement. And I also think that ends up becoming a very fulfilling experience because it's not about, achieving an outcome that you're chasing so that you can be happy. It's a day in and day out pursuit of getting better at a certain thing, whether that's storytelling or editing, or creating entertaining content, that whatever that is. I think that also allows you to not play a game where you're comparing yourself with other people or attaching to these external validations. The other thing is, like, if you make the goal of, I'm going to be the biggest creator in the world, well, then what happens if you do become the biggest creator in the world? You lose all motivation. You stop. I can guarantee you that, both for Mr. Beast or even for like the best basketball player in the world, LeBron James, if his goal was like, I'm going to be the best basketball player in the world, he would have retired by now. He would have stopped a long time ago, or like kind of lost motivation. But it's, what is the best basketball player I can become ever? And whether you lose a game or whether you win a game stops mattering as much because it's about you and how much better you can get. And so anyway, I think that's the thing that I've seen, or I try to advocate for as much as I can within creators, that I think will leave them at the end of the day feeling as happy as possible.
Sometimes with these goals too, to use your like best basketball player in the world example, if you actually play that forward and say, if I did achieve that goal, what else would be true? And is that what I want? Use the example of Mr. Beast can barely live a normal life and leave the house. And some people might say that's absolutely not worth it to me. In which case, 100%. This goal doesn't actually align then with what you want for your life. And I think the question of, if this goes as well as it could, am I happy with the outcome, is a worthwhile question to ask sometimes.
Yeah, Thomas from Yes Theory was on a podcast, and I saw a clip where he said, it's really easy to look at bigger creators and say, wow, that success is shiny. I really want that. But yeah, you forget to also think, you know, do I want to also not be able to go into a mall anymore? Do I want to also, you know, worry about the security and safety of my children or worry about stalkers and all this type of stuff? And then he goes, no. I think Instagram and social media platforms have really only shown us the sexy part in people's lives. And so we romanticize the success. But, you know, Instagram doesn't have another feed that shows us all the shit that's going on in people's lives too, that they're like worried about or stressed about. And so, like, you know, just a reminder, Mr. Beast goes through a lot of shit, a lot of stalkers, a lot of stuff, lawsuits, crazy stuff. I don't, you know, like all famous people do, because that's the byproduct of getting to that level. And yes, it's really hard to know because no one prepares you for that. No one sits you down when you're starting to grow and starting to achieve success and says, like, this is where this is heading. And so I think more people should talk about it. I think it is important.
Something else you and I agree on, the way we define success. If we were to look at views as the metric that we care about, that implicitly says that all views are equal to me. But I would argue that views from returning viewers, views from your loyal viewers, people who really love the channel, are more valuable than views from someone who's meeting you from the first time. Coming from a world where I focused mostly on email and knowing that, hey, when do purchases happen? It happens from somebody who's been reading my emails for weeks, months, years, and has been following this stuff. It's inherently a more valuable relationship. I think people on YouTube are starting to sense this too, but what are you seeing?
Very well put also with the returning to new viewer, because so much of, I think, YouTube optimization and YouTube gurus have emphasized that, like, look at your retention graph and see what your new user retention is and focus on the new user and the top of funnel, top of funnel, top of funnel. And it's like growth and impression mindset. But yes, exactly. I think that over the last little bit, we've seen a lot of creators grow in the top of funnel metrics, such as views or subscribers, but then not have the connection with an audience that feels loyal to them or feels connected to them or feels part of a community that's larger than just the channel. That also leads to other things that the creator has tried to do, such as like launch products or launch businesses or do things of that nature. And not every creator needs to do that. I do think that that's a personal choice that a creator makes in terms of, like, what is the type of channel I want to have? What's the type of creator I want to be? What is the type of business model, you know, that I want to operate under? You don't necessarily need to launch a business just because you're a creator, just because other creators are doing it. But I think that we're also in a time where creators are realizing there's new platforms starting up all the time. There's new features that these platforms are releasing. They're making algorithm changes. You really don't know how long, you know, the thing that you're doing will work for. And the only thing that you can do to try to create some sort of longevity for yourself and create, you know, like de-risk yourself to some of the potential changes that might occur is to build a connection with the people who are watching you, so that it doesn't matter what happens to these platforms, or it doesn't matter if a new platform pops up, because people are a fan of you. And that's not because some algorithm happens to put your content in front of them at a specific time or in a specific way, or because if you added a shiny specific topic, but because they like you and or the thing that you stand for and that you provide. And so I think that creators often don't optimize for connection because it's hard to measure. It's hard to know if someone at the other end of the screen feels something because you don't see it in a number on your YouTube studio dashboard. So we just end up optimizing for things like watch time or retention or viewership. But I do think that more people should be aware of how they can measure that and then try to create proxies in order to do that. I'll give you an example. You know, with Yes Theory, we used to say, what's our golden metric? And we would be like, is it views? Is it revenue? Is it whatever? And we were like, none of those matter. The golden metric for us is how many people can we get to take a certain action. And that action could be purchasing something. That action could be subscribing and giving their email. It had to be deeper than just a like. It's not just engagement. It's an action that's beyond YouTube. And so that was the metric for us is if people are taking action and they're going through a piece of friction that takes them off of this platform, pretty good indication to us that they care and they're not passive. And so, you know, we tried to create our own proxy to do that. And I think more creators should try to figure out what that is for themselves.
Well, I'd love to get a little tactical here and say, I have several hundred, maybe even several thousand subscribers. but growth feels slow. What should I do to start to increase that a little bit faster?
I think it's hard to give general advice in that scenario because so much of the thing that might work for you is very case dependent on how your videos are doing. I would say the best thing you could probably do is find a group of creators that are around your skill level, subscriber count, potentially even in your niche, ideally just slightly above, and ask them to roast your videos and ask them for specific feedback on what you could do better. I often talk to a lot of creators who have, let's say, somewhere between 5,000 to 50,000 subscribers. And they're like, I'm ready to start a business, or like, I'm ready for what's next, or I want to launch a podcast, or I want to launch a second channel. And I encourage all those people to not do those things and not take your attention away from the thing that is finally starting to gain a little bit of momentum, and just double down. If there's anything you should do, it's double down. Same thing with brand deals. People message me and they go, oh, I'm at 10,000. Can I just start, spending a bunch of my time reaching out to hundreds of brands? No, don't do that, because you're finally starting to build momentum and connection with an audience, and integrating a brand, especially one that, you don't actually use or trust, just so that you can get a couple dollars, will erode the trust that you're starting to develop with the audience. And also will take away a bunch of time that you could have been spending making your videos better on like sending millions of cold emails or like trying to be in that coordination process. So I would say don't do those things, and instead just find people that can give you the advice that you're looking for. And that's not going to be blanket advice. It's going to be from people who are down to spend time watching your videos, are knowledgeable about YouTube and digital content. And so I think that having that brain trust, that's I think what we try to create within CreatorNow is, can you meet those people and get actionable advice that you can then go implement to get to that next stage of your career?
Distraction and diversifying your attention and effort seems to be one of the biggest pitfalls that I notice in folks that are otherwise pretty well set up for success, because you get to this point where the velocity of what feels like an opportunity, quote unquote, to you increases. And there are things that you couldn't imagine having 3 months ago, 6 months ago. So it's really hard to say no to those things. But it sounds like you're saying that distraction might be one of the biggest risks to the thing that you want, which is growth, success, improvement on the channel.
Yeah. I'll give Eric credit here again too. He does this really well. He's always done this really well. Like he'd be, on a tear, being one of the fastest channels growing at for a long time. And he would get invited to all these parties, and he'd get invited to all these like cool Hollywood events. And he would always be like, nah, I don't want to go. And he's like, the only reason I'm getting invited to those is because I'm doing well on YouTube. And if I go to those events, I'll stop doing well on YouTube. And so the biggest thing I can do is just keep trying to do well on YouTube. And so that those are just an indication that it's working. And that's, if I indulge in that too much, it's taking away from the thing that got me there in the first place. And so I think that was a really refreshing mindset. And I admire him for being able to stay within that when all the shiny stuff was getting thrown at him.
Is there anything that you have a hunch about, something you believe to be true, but you don't necessarily have data to support, but it's impacting the creators you work with or the work that you're doing because you just really believe this is true?
Man, Jay, your fucking questions are so good. It's amazing.
It's a fun question.
It's a great question. Do I have a hunch about something? I think that we're on the verge of there's a huge white space for social networks to come back. I don't know if this is huge for the creator economy, but I don't know if anyone's noticed, but what started as social networks so that we can connect with our friends have turned into entertainment platforms. And all of the platforms that used to be about us having a better relationship with the people that we go to school with or work with or care about in our lives, our families, has just turned into algorithmic feeds of strangers making content that we can watch. And Instagram, Facebook, YouTube look a lot more like Netflix than the original social networks that they were promised to us to be. And I think that we're on the verge of a huge white space for more consumer applications to come out that actually give us a place to meet and connect with friends in a way that's not about getting massive amounts of impressions or viewership, but more about like actual real connection with the people that we want to actually follow in real life. And so what that means for the creator economy, I'm not 100% sure, but I do think it will fundamentally change the way that we interact with the social media platforms that will almost start to just be called entertainment platforms in the same way we think of Netflix.
Do you think that there's less opportunity for new creators starting today?
No, I think there's equal, if not more opportunity, especially with the ease of tools that can teach you. I think Shorts was one of the greatest things that could happen for video creators because it just took the bar of entry so much lower. The feedback loop grew so much quicker because you could create something and not have to like put in a month of work to be able to know if it sucked or not. And it always does suck when you start. So it just got the feedback loop quickened. So I think it's a great time still to become a creator. I think it will only continue to be a greater time to become a creator as more attention goes towards the entertainment platforms that are user generated versus, studio generated. But where that goes, I'm not entirely sure. I just think that we're just going to fundamentally think about these platforms in a very different way than we have in the past.
Listening to Zack distill down what makes a successful creator is seriously impressive. But seeing it in action will take what you learned this episode to a whole new level. Watch this video with Jenny Hoyos, a massive CreatorNow success story, where she breaks down how she solved YouTube Shorts.